Right now on Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News, radon gas, a silent cancer-causing threat found in many Colorado homes.
You have stage 3A inoperable lung cancer. Your prognosis is not good.
A cancer survivor shares her personal story on how radon changed her life forever and why it's important to take a proactive approach.
Any home can have a radon problem, so the only way to know is to test.
Get your home tested because this is a risk no one needs to take.
Plus, we tested our own homes for radon, what we found, and what you should do if your home tests high.
Welcome to Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News. I'm Colorado Public Radio's Nathan Fernando-Frescas.
And I'm Denver7's Micah Smith. Each week in a partnership between Denver7 and CPR, we have a real talk about issues impacting underrepresented people across Colorado and amplifying voices you may not always hear.
January is National Radon Action Month, a time to educate the public about the dangers of radon exposure and the importance of mitigation.
Many Coloradans may not know radon is present in every part of our state. Colorado is 45th in the nation for the percent of radon tests that are above the EPA action level.
Now, radon is a naturally occurring radioactive gas. It has no color, odor, or taste, so you likely don't know if your house has high levels of it.
But it can have major effects on our health. The state says living in a home with Colorado's average radon level is like having 200 chest x-rays a year. Wow. Radon exposure is the second leading cause of lung cancer after smoking, and more than 500 lung cancer deaths in the state are attributed to radon each year.
Our first guest is someone who personally understands the danger of radon, Heidi Nafman-Onda, a lung cancer survivor, and her husband, Dr. Pierre Onda. Thank you both for being here today.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
So, Heidi, I want to start with you. You're a lifelong health enthusiast. You are a health educator, a fitness trainer. You are someone who's never smoked, so you are healthy. You are epitome of health, right? Until this diagnosis. So can you start with when you were diagnosed with lung cancer and what was going on at the time?
Yes, so this was an incidental finding. I had an ovarian cyst 6 years ago. I was 55 years old, so that was a little unusual. And my doctor ordered a CT scan of my chest, abdomen, and pelvis to rule out ovarian cancer. And what came back was your ovary looks like a normal ovarian cyst, but there happens to be a mass in the upper left lobe of your lung and some lymph nodes in the middle of your chest that look plump. That led to a PET scan, which lit up like a Christmas tree. And before I knew it, I was having a biopsy and then the recipient of a phone call that changed my life forever. You have stage 3A inoperable lung cancer. You have no biomarkers that are targetable, so your prognosis is not good, and you should probably get your affairs in order. I couldn't believe what I was hearing because as a health educator, I did all those things that were right. And I, only understood that if you had a smoking history, you were vulnerable to lung cancer. So we were shocked. The really scary thing about this, though, was I had no respiratory symptoms. So how could I have lung cancer? Number one, I didn't have the risk factors. And how could it be late stage? Because I felt fine.
Yeah.
So as you're trying to figure this out, Pierre, I want to bring you in because you know Heidi's health history. This diagnosis, I'm sure, was just as shocking to you. How did you help her piece together that this is radon exposure?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say, as a primary care physician at the time, I wasn't aware really of the risks of radon. So it was my son, actually, who was studying environmental engineering. And the first thing he asked, because he knew that his mother did not have other risk factors, he asked, what's the radon level in your home? And that's where we began to read about radon, learn about the risks, and immediately get our home tested. And it was elevated.
Yeah. And had you been in your home for a long time? Was there testing done maybe years ago before you moved in?
No. Unfortunately, no. We had been living in that home for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And during the purchasing process, during, interactions with friends, we really were not aware of the risks.
Yeah.
So Heidi, you go through this health battle. You're still with us. Can you kind of walk us through how you went through this battle and how you were inspired to try to help others?
Yes. So again, initially given this dire prognosis, I then had my appointment with the oncologist, and he told me that there was a new immunotherapy that had just been FDA approved about a month prior to my diagnosis. So back in September of 2018, this approval took place. So I had chemoradiation, 3 cycles. I did quite well during that. My tumor really shrunk a lot. And then I was a candidate for the immunotherapy every other week for 1 year. And I'm sitting here today with my last cancer treatment, January of 2020, with no evidence of cancer right now. The story doesn't end there, though, because we have to get surveilled. This can come back. And so it's always this looming, thought that, the cancer could come back and be more aggressive. So get your home tested, because this is a risk no one needs to take.
Yeah, and I think there is that connection that, people don't know this is a thing they need to look out for, right? And maybe if you're buying a new home, you may have that process to test for radon, but for you, it definitely wasn't even in your mind, right?
Correct. We originally came from Southern California. We had never heard about radon. Again, both trained in prevention, and we really hadn't heard anything about radon. My real concern came into mind when the test came back, double the actionable level that the EPA set. And I thought about my kids. My kids spent much more time in the basement than I ever did. Could they be walking around with lung cancer right now? Because many of the diagnoses out there now are in young people in their late 20s, early 30s. What's going on here? Could it be radon? Could it be something else? We don't know. But 2 years before I was diagnosed, when we became empty nesters, we turned the basement into a cardio gym space. And I was on my elliptical every day for an hour, huffing and puffing. And then 2 years later, I have late-stage lung cancer.
Wow, so that is just so scary. For our listeners, we do have 2 big white ribbon cutouts behind Nathan and I, and Heidi and Pierre as well. And this is symbolic of the White Ribbon Project. Would you all tell us what that is?
Well, it's a nonprofit organization that Heidi and I co-founded, and its mission is to promote lung cancer awareness by changing the public perception of the disease.
Well, what is the public perception? Are there some negatives there that come with being diagnosed with lung cancer in terms of public perception?
Yes, there's quite a stigma out there that people somehow cause this cancer themselves, whether it be, a smoking history or just unhealthy lifestyle. And I think we need to normalize this cancer, because why is it the lungs are the only organ in the body that could only generate a cancer if it gets a tobacco product? I mean, that really doesn't make sense. So there's not a lot of funding that goes into lung cancer research because of the stigma, and we need more research. Why are so many young women getting diagnosed? Why are the screening rates so low? We really need to get awareness out there. Anyone with lungs can get lung cancer, and no one deserves it.
There's over 14 million Americans who now qualify for lung cancer screening, and less than 5% are getting screened. For those who, for example, find that their radon levels are elevated, but don't have a history of tobacco use, they currently don't qualify for screening. It's not necessarily recommended by current guidelines. However, what I would suggest is that they speak to their doctors and other subject matter experts and say, well, what is my risk and what can I do? And at minimum, what they can do is test their homes for radon and mitigate it.
Yeah.
All right, Pierre and Heidi, thank you so much for joining us for this Real Talk.
Thank you.
Well, the best way to protect against radon, again, is to test your home. Pierre just said it. So Nathan and I did just that.
That's right. Coming up, we're sitting down with CDPHE to go through those results and what you need to know if your home does indeed test high. Stay with us. This is Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News.
Welcome back to Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News. I'm Denver7's Micah Smith.
And I'm Colorado Public Radio's Nathan Fernando-Frescas. We're talking about radon exposure in Colorado and the health impacts that come from it.
Being exposed to high levels of radon for many years can increase your risk of lung cancer, even if you've never smoked. And for those who do smoke, the risk is almost 11 times higher.
but there are ways you can reduce your risk, starting with testing your home for high levels of radon. Micah and I took that first step and put these test kits in our home.
Here to help walk us through our results is Margaret Horton, Program Coordinator for the Colorado Radon Program at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Thank you so much for being here today, Margaret.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to go first. I put my test in my Lakewood home, and my radon level is 0.8 PCIL, which is actually a big improvement from when I bought the house, which I believe it was a 4 PCIL. What does that measurement mean, and how does that risk compare to average levels across Colorado?
So those are very good levels that you have now. So anything under 4 picocuries per liter is, a target to shoot for. So it sounds like you mitigated your home and got those levels down.
Yeah.
So glad to hear that.
And what is PCIL? What does that mean?
So that stands for picocurie per liter. And so that represents how many times an atom is undergoing radioactive decay in 1 liter of air. And so it's basically how radioactive is the air.
Got it.
I also tested my home, just got the results, and I'm sitting at a 4.6. I'm a little bit nervous because I know anything above a 4 isn't great. Margaret, can you tell me what my results say about what needs to happen next?
So I'm so glad you tested and found that, your levels are somewhat elevated. So with a result like 4.6, it's a good idea to run another radon test. You could either do another short-term test, so one that, is 2 to 5 days, or you could do a long-term test. And those tests run 3 months up to a year. And the benefit of that is that, radon is highest right now in the winter, and it's lower, in the summer months. Maybe you open windows, things like that. And, the long-term average kind of evens out. And so your levels on the long term could be below 4. And so mitigation may not be warranted. However, if you have those other risk factors that we've talked about, like smoking and a family history of lung cancer, you might just want to take action and get it mitigated for the peace of mind, if nothing else.
Talk to us a little bit about radon. Does it seeps through the floors?
So radon gets produced when uranium in the soil breaks down. So you have to have uranium to have a radon problem. And we have uranium all over the state of Colorado. And so when radon gas is produced, it wants to find its way out of the soil into the air. And our homes actually act like vacuums on the soil underneath our homes. The basement or even the first floor, if you have a slab on grade, can be that area where the radon first goes in your home. But sometimes radon can travel up to other levels through things like pipe chases or chimneys, elevator shafts. Any home can have a radon problem, so the only way to know is to test.
And I'm thinking about the mitigation process that I went through when I bought my home. I have a neighbor who lives next to me, and he was like, it's just kind of a racket for the real estate, people. Like, it's a thing that I don't want to do. I don't believe in radon. How's it affecting me? I guess there's this sense of, is this really a thing? At least in my neighborhood, at least, and with my neighbors who are like, why do you have this giant fan outside your house now that's doing, you don't know what it's doing, right?
That's a common sentiment that I hear. But radon is a Class A carcinogen, so it's known to cause cancer. So that's recognized by the WHO, the EPA, CDC. And that's, on par with things like benzene and other chemicals that, like formaldehyde too, that are definitely not something that you want to mess with. And then you hear stories like Heidi's that we just heard. And that really adds that personal aspect to it. So you can hear about a Class A carcinogen, but when you hear Heidi's story, I don't want to take that risk with my own health or my family's health either.
Yeah.
I don't want to take that risk either. And this is all very new to me, just being transparent. But now that I know, I want to make sure, again, that I follow through on my test, and if mitigation needs to be done, that I do that. I will say, though, the word mitigation is a little daunting to me. I don't even know what it looks like. I'm hearing a big fan from Nathan. But Margaret, would you mind kind of telling us a little bit more about what mitigation looks like?
Yeah, definitely. So a radon mitigation system will look a little bit different, from one house to another, and it is largely dependent on the foundation of the house. But the basic principle is the same. So with a radon mitigation system, we want to pull the radon gas out from underneath the home before it ever has a chance to enter the living space. And so we do that by connecting to the area beneath the foundation. So if you have a concrete slab, we'll drill a hole and put a PVC pipe in the hole and basically extend to the outside of the house and use the fan to pull the radon gas out from underneath the concrete. Or if you have a crawl space, we need to create that barrier by laying down plastic sheeting and then connecting to underneath the plastic sheeting, using the fan again to pull the gas out from underneath the plastic and basically vacuum seal that crawl space floor, making sure that the radon doesn't get into your home.
Seems like a big job. Like at its base level, it seems feasible, but it does seem like kind of a big thing to do. So,
but it's surprisingly a quick procedure in terms of the installation time. It should take about a day or less for most homes. And the general cost for a basic system can range anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000.
So people do want to test their homes. How do they get a kit? How much does it cost? Kind of give us lowdown on that.
So right now is a great time to test your home. Colorado is offering all Colorado residents, one per household, a free radon test kit. So you can go to our website, www.coloradoradon.info, to request that test kit.
Well, coming up, we're talking with someone who did mitigate their home.
how they say the process shouldn't hold you back from prioritizing your health. This is Real Talk with Denver 7 and CPR News.
Welcome back to Real Talk with Denver 7 and CPR News. I'm Colorado Public Radio's Nathan Fernando-Frescas.
And I'm Denver 7's Micah Smith. Throughout this episode, you've heard about the dangers of radon exposure and why it's important to test your home. Now let's focus on what to do to get rid of the radon in your home.
Yeah, radon mitigation systems can help prevent radon from getting inside and can reduce current levels by diluting indoor air. Now, these systems usually cost about $1,000 to $2,000 in Colorado. It can be even higher if you run into design problems.
But cost shouldn't stop you from protecting your health. CDPHE has a low-income radon mitigation assistance program to help, and now we want to hear directly from a homeowner who went through that program.
Yeah, joining us now is Gail Sigmund, a low-income radon mitigation assistance recipient. Gail, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So first, when did you learn your home had high levels of radon?
Well, actually, on and off, because the tests were free, it's like a free test. So I had been getting the tests since probably 2017 or 18. And sometimes they were a little lower. It was 5 one time. And then I think in 2019, it was up to 10 point something. I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't really trust. I didn't know there was a assistance program. I don't trust these contractors. So it'll be fine. My kids are out of the house. I don't have to worry about it. And then I tested in 2021, and it went down to like 5.6, which is still higher than 4, but way lower than 10. So I thought, okay, it's fine. So I tested last June, and it was up to 11.3.
Okay.
And I thought, all right, I guess it's really time that I have to do this.
But you were a skeptic, and I want to go back to that. What made you a skeptic? Why were you like, I don't know about this radon stuff?
Well, because much like your neighbor, I felt like I don't know who to trust. It's probably really expensive. Mitigation sounds daunting. I don't even know where to start looking. I don't know how much it's going to cost. But I decided that now it just was going up high enough that I just had to bite the bullet. And I started looking for contractors actually on my own. And it was a contractor who had come to give me a bid who said, have you ever heard of Lerma? And I said, oh, I'm sure I don't qualify. Well, it turns out, I don't know if you know, but in at least Denver County, and it changes for all different counties, but in Denver County, as a single person, you can earn up to $71,800 a year and still qualify.
Wow.
That's huge. That's retired people. That's so many people. And I was like, I can't believe I qualify for this. I got to get on this and apply.
Yeah, and so walk us through that process. Was it like a website? Did you have to have someone come out to your house? What was the process like?
It was actually so easy. It's a website, and you have to have a few documents. You talk about when you bought your house. You need to prove that it's your house, that you own it. You have to supply a recent test that shows that you're over the 4% or 4 level.
Yeah.
But it took me less than probably 15 minutes to apply. The hardest thing was just pulling together the documents and then uploading it into a website.
Yeah.
So once you were approved, how long did it take for the mitigation work to actually be completed?
It was really fast. The approval took a few weeks just because there's so many applicants.
Sure.
And then once it's approved, Lerma sends out to all of that was the other thing that was so great. They have a list of contractors that they've already approved of, that they already know aren't scammers. So then I was like, oh, phew, I don't have to worry. So they send out the bid, and they only have 1 week to get in touch with you and get to your house and come look at it.
Yeah.
And then after that, I think it was maybe less than 2 weeks, Margaret called and she said, okay, let's go through all of these. And what was interesting to me is that when I was collecting my own contractors, I think I had 4 of them come before I ever knew that I could apply. And 2 of them said, okay, yeah, we'll just do this one system. But 2 of them had said, you have a large ranch house. It's going to take more than one system. You're going to have a system on each side of the house to pull it all out. Yeah. And I thought, oh, they're never going to go for 2 systems because it's not quite double, but it's a lot more than the 1 to 3,000, at least based on the estimates I had already gotten.
Sure.
Margaret said to me, this is not just about the price. It's about what does your house need and who's going to do the best job. And so we went through it and we kind of agreed as to which contractors. I think that happened within 2 weeks, and probably we had it scheduled with the contractor within 2 more weeks. And as I said, I have a double system, and it still was all done in 1 day.
And do you know if I'm assuming the mitigation has worked. Do you have the?
Yeah, as a part of what you have to do, you have to retest once it's done, and then send those results. And the contractor doesn't get paid by Lerma, I believe, until those results come back and show. And it went from 11.3 to 0.8.
That is a significant drop.
That's a big drop. Gail, did you have to pay anything out of pocket?
No.
Wow.
No. I couldn't believe it. It just, no.
So for the people listening and watching who say the cost is what's holding them back from even testing because they don't even want to know if they need mitigation because they can't afford it if they do, what would you say to them?
I would say that I would go onto the website and take a look at what the requirements are, look at your county, look at what the eligibility threshold is, because as I've said, it's so much higher than I ever believed that it would be. It is called low-income assistance, but the income level is high enough that I think that a lot of people could apply for it. And as I understand it, there are more funds available than people are using, which is crazy. Like I would tell anybody, and the peace of mind that I have now, just knowing it's out of my house, especially listening to people like Heidi. How do you put a price on that? And it's actually free.
The peace of mind is priceless. Gail Sigmund, recipient of Lerma, which is Colorado's low-income radon mitigation assistance program. Thank you so much for joining us for this Real Talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's this week's episode of Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News. Every week we have a real talk on issues that impact Coloradans who are often overlooked.
You can find all of our shows on denver7.com/realtalk or at cpr.org/realtalk. Have a great day.